I wake up and it's pitch black. I furrow my brow, confused. Normally there's a light leaking through the window blinds from the street light down below, so my room is never completely dark. But this is so black, so dark that I can't see an inch in front of me. I go to raise my hand up, to wave it around the front of my face, trying to test this darkness, when it hits the ceiling. My confusion deepens as I press my hand up, placing it flat on the surface in front of me. It's sturdy and soft. I run my hand up and down it, feeling the velvet beneath my fingers, hitting small bumps and feeling them fall, some bouncing on my chest and stomach. I move my hand to the right, feeling the velvet abruptly cut off. I run my hand past it, feeling a small space of wood before a wall comes up, stopping me. I run my hand down the new wall, feeling more softness. I realize my fingers are coated in dust. Panic begins to well up in my throat as I raise my left hand, feeling the exact same thing on the other side to me. More velvet-covered walls, barely giving me any room to move. I kick my feet. I can hear the dull sound of them connecting with the roof. There's no reverb or echo of the noise, just a quiet thump each time they make contact. You're in a coffin. My mind whispers, cutting through the screams that are beginning to form in my throat. You're in a coffin and you're probably 6 feet under. I can hardly swallow, let alone breathe at this realization before I lose control. I'm kicking and hitting as much as I can, hearing my struggle as I hit the velvet linings of my coffin. I'm not dead, I scream. The sound suddenly so loud that I momentarily pause, surprised to hear my own voice, before I pick up again, punching the lid. Bring me up, I'm not dead. I'm not sure how long I fought my own coffin for. It could have been minutes or hours. All I could focus on was the feeling of confinement against my limbs and the rush of blood in my ears, reminding me that I was still alive. I was breathing, my heart beating fiercely against my ribcage. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Somebody has to know that this wasn't right. Somebody had to be nearby who could hear my struggle and my screams, somehow through the wood and fabric and possible dirt. It wasn't until my arms gave out that I gave up, letting them fall limply to my side, my chest rising and falling rapidly as I caught my breath, my mind racing as I tried to figure out my next move. Then I felt it. Something crawling up my neck, barely touching my cheek before I lost it again. I thrashed with renewed energy as much as I could in the small space, feeling it slide off me. I quickly reach up, pinching it between my thumb and forefinger, catching it. I already know what it is, so I'm not surprised as it begins to wiggle, trying to free itself. I'm expecting a worm, my mind conjuring film scenes of skeletons crawling with them. I'm surprised as I feel little legs scrambling at my fingers and a hard exoskeleton protecting the soft bug underneath. Disgusted, I fling it away from me, realizing what I had thought before was bumps along the roof of your coffin prompts my mind was actually insects. My skin crawls as I remember them falling on me, but I can't do anything as they continue to criss and cross my body, the sensation of their movement sending constant goosebumps up my arms and legs. I lay there, trying to be completely still. I'm not sure how long I did. All I can really remember is silently begging the creepy crawlies to stay away from my face, particularly my ears. My mind, on the other hand, continued to race. Can I get out? Can I get free? What if I punch my way out? Would my hand break before that would happen? If I keep yelling, will someone hear me? Will I run out of air down here? Am I going to die down here? Will anyone ever know that I was alive when they buried me? How long had I been in here for? Long enough for bugs to immigrate into the coffin with me. I thought back to one of those crime-solving drama shows, barely watching it as I surfed on my phone. They had said that it took a while for the wood of a coffin to decay enough for anything to burrow in. If I was freshly buried, then there should have been only coffin flies with me. I'd been here for a while. My stomach turned over, suddenly in my throat as I quickly turned my head, retching into the small free area between my body and the wall. I threw up again and again until my stomach clenched and I couldn't find anything more to bring up. I blinked back the tears, trying not to think about the smell now invading the small area. Oh God, I choked out, suddenly thinking of grade school science classrooms, a dead frog laying on the silver platter, spread out for all the world to see. I realized I recognized the smell. It was embalming fluid, the same as they used on the frog in my 8th grade class when Dennis Jones was my science partner. He had cut out the frog's intestines when the teacher wasn't looking, waiting for me to turn my back before placing them all in my hair, laughing gleefully as I panicked. I would never forget that smell. I slowly raised my hand to my face, tracing along my lips, then my cheeks to my eyelids. It felt like inches of makeup was plastered to me, forcing my mind to think back to the funeral viewings I'd been to, seeing the dead covered in fake color to impersonate the living. Oh God, I repeated, closing my eyes. I'm fucking dead. Amongst the discharge of worms, I laid there, thinking and then trying not to think, and failing as my mind repeated the questions I'd been asking for hours. How did I get here? How long have I been here for? Long enough for dust and bugs to settle in with me. I cried, quiet and slowly, unable to curl into a ball like I so desperately wanted to do. What was my funeral like? Did they put me in the white dress I loved so much, that I wore every chance I could get, laughingly telling my parents that I would be buried in it? Oh God, my parents. Did they cry? Of course they cried, I was their only child. Did they have the viewing in a church? I could only hope not, my nose wrinkling at the thought of being inside the stifling building again. How many people came? How many of my friends? I suddenly couldn't help but begin to laugh. I tried to stifle it at first before it evolved into a full belly laugh as I thought of my ex, Brad, showing up distraught, since the last thing he had told me before leaving me was to go fucking kill yourself. I could imagine his face, tear-stained as he looked at me, the guilt sitting like a heavy stone in his stomach, trying to face my family. It was just so fucking hilarious to think of. After a few minutes, the laughter died down to a few peals of giggles here and there before I stopped completely. That's right, Brad did tell me to kill myself. I could remember sitting in the empty bathtub, feeling more angry than I'd ever felt. He had wanted me to kill myself? Then I'll fucking show him. I didn't need to move my right hand to my left to feel the sutures in my wrists to know I had done just that. But I still did, letting my fingers dance along between string and skin. This was my punishment then, for spitting in the face of God for his gift of life. Was I to spend however long in my own prison? It seemed fitting. I really can't tell you how long I sat there in that pitch black, unable to keep from touching my wrists. I momentarily wondered why they were stitched up when I remembered the mortician probably did that, wanting to keep the sight away from my family and friends. It was probably an easy fix compared to car crashes and gunshots. I fell asleep without realizing. Or I think I did. It's hard to tell when you can't see anything. I think I woke up when I could feel something crawling down my neck, clicking too closely to my ear. I reached down as much as I could, feeling the hem of my skirt, the fabric stiff and dusty, but it ripped easily in my hands. Taking the chunk of dress, I ripped it again into two and quickly shoved each piece into my ear, momentarily giving me peace of mind and banishing the vision of eggs laid in them. I stayed awake for a little bit longer before I fell back into another stupor. Suddenly, I could hear a new sound. It was muffled by my protected ears, but still loud enough to penetrate the cloth. I reached up, gingerly unplugging my ears as I focused on this sound. It was coming from outside my coffin, almost directly above me. I listened to it, almost hypnotized by it for a while, hearing the rhythmic sound of heartbeats, two twin sounds in almost perfect harmony. Someone's shoveling dirt, my mind fills in, almost smug in its realization. Shoveling dirt right above you. I blink, opening my lips to shout before pausing, my lungs letting out a weak wheeze. I cleared my throat and tried again. I didn't scream words this time. Instead, it was a senseless howl for help, my blood once again pumping fiercely through my veins as I started to bang on the walls again, bouncing my body as much as I could in it. After a minute, I realized the shoveling had stopped and I followed suit, settling down. I strained my ears, fearing the worst, that I was mistaken about someone being above my grave. "If you stay settled down, we'll get you out as fast as we can," a gravelly male voice called out, deadened by the layers of velvet, wood, and dirt between us. I nodded, clamping my mouth shut, unable to answer him simply. I feared if I tried to answer him simply, I'd devolve back into the screaming, out-of-control person I had been. So instead, I clasped my hands together over my chest, staring where I thought the voice had been exactly. The shoveling continued, stretching for what felt like hours, when I could hear the clang of metal on wood. Pay dirt. I waited anxiously, my ears picking up the sound of fingers scraping on wood, before I could hear the seal around the edges pop and the lid slowly raise up. It was the dead of night, ironically enough, but the little light from a lantern set to the side still hurt my eyes. I winced and closed them, looking away before remembering someone had opened the casket. I forced my eyes open to ignore the pain and look at my saviors. One was an older man, the epitome of grizzled, while the second man at his side was young, but not too youthful. They both looked like they had been through hell as well, with dirt blemishes covering them from almost head to toe, a few spots untouched. The older man turned, raising a leg and pulling him out to the grave, while the younger one waited patiently for me to shimmy out of my pine box, my legs a little weak as I tried to stand. "Here you go, let's get you out of there," the man said, reaching a hand down. I took it, letting him pull me up while the younger one gave me a boost. My knees slid into wet grass, undoubtedly staining my white dress green. I didn't care. I was out of my grave. The man crouched down next to me, looking me over before his nose wrinkled. I'm sure I looked like a mess, hair full of vomit and dirt, probably a few bugs as well. My face dirty and streaked from the massive amount of makeup put on to cover the mask of death. "Well," he finally said after a few seconds, "it could have been worse. You could have been an organ donor. Those ones aren't as pretty." I almost didn't hear him. I was so focused on my headstone. I barely read over my name, not really reading it. Instead, I focused on the date of birth to the date of death. The 24th of May, 1992 to the 30th of July, 2012. "What year is it?" I asked, my voice thin and reedy in this wide open space. The man sighed heavily. "It's 2017, man. You've been gone, to put it nicely, for 5 years. "Why?" I rasped, turning to look at him. "How?" He shrugged, scratching his head. "We don't know how or why, ma'am. I'm sorry, I wish I knew. The dead, to be blunt this time, are rising up all over. You're the fourth we've pulled out this night, and dollars to donuts, the other group is about even with that." He looked up as the younger man climbed out of my grave, nodding his head over to where another group gathered at a different part of the cemetery. "George, go see if they need any help over there. I can handle this on my own." He turned his attention back to me, grinning a bit. "Sweetheart, I bet you're starving, aren't you?" I blinked, suddenly aware that I was. My stomach was churning and growling lowly, begging to be filled. I looked at the man, but my eyes couldn't stay on his. They kept drifting to his exposed throat, the flesh warm and full, even in the low light from the flashlight. I cleared my throat, nodding. I could go for a bite.